bucka. Ha. You know the deal.
The next thing we're going to talk about in our algebra unit involves adding and subtracting polynomials. And the first question you're probably going to ask yourself is, well, what is a polynomial? And we can define a polynomial as a mathematical expression that involves algebra. So it's really just a math sentence that involves algebra. So, for example, 3x plus 2 would be considered a polynomial. It's a math sentence, an expression that does involve algebra. We've got our x there, and we can't do anything to simplify that because there are no like terms in that math sentence. Similarly, 5y squared minus 3y plus 8, that's another polynomial, a math sentence that involves algebra. And again, we have no like terms there, so that can't be simplified. 7xy plus 4wz, another expression that involves algebra. So all of these are examples of polynomials. In the first math sentence and the last math sentence, we have a polynomial with two terms, and in the middle math sentence here, we have a polynomial with three terms. So the first couple of examples we're going to look at here involve adding polynomials. So as you can see here, we have two polynomials, one part of our math sentence here, that's a polynomial, so a math sentence that involves algebra, and we're adding it to another expression that involves algebra. If you recall from the video on adding and subtracting integers, as well as the video on like terms, that's really what adding and subtracting polynomials involves. It involves both of those things. So normally if we were going to follow order of operations here, we would start with what's inside of the brackets. And if you look at what we have inside of each of those brackets there, we don't have any like terms. We have an x term here, but it's x squared. And x squared is different from x. So those are not like terms, and similarly these two terms here, 3x squared minus 5x, are not like terms because the variables are not exactly the same. But if you look at this whole math sentence, the two polynomials here do have like terms. So since we have a case here where in each polynomial we do have like terms, we can actually add these polynomials together by adding the like terms that are there in each separate polynomial. So there are a couple of different ways to do this. The way that I suggest, the first step is to get rid of the brackets. So we can simply remove the brackets from the first polynomial and rewrite the polynomial just as it is. So we have 2x squared plus 3x minus 4. Now, when we're getting rid of the second set of brackets, the one that where we're adding to the first set of brackets, we do have to be a little bit careful with the signs. So what we're really doing here is we're combining operations. So we're adding 3x squared. We're adding positive 3x squared. So that's just adding 3x squared. Well, adding a minus is the same as subtracting. So adding minus 5x is the same as subtracting 5x. And adding minus 7 is the same as subtracting 7. And these are skills that we talked about in the adding and subtracting integers video. And you probably noticed that when we removed both the first brackets and the second brackets, nothing really changed. The operations stayed the same. So for example, in the first set of brackets, here we have plus 3x, this remained plus 3x. One thing we have to be careful of is we have to put the operation in front of the first term of the second brackets. It's plus 3x squared. We have to make sure to include that plus 3x squared. Well, now all we can really do is add or subtract, really combine the like terms. So let's start with 2x squared. Well, if we look at this whole math sentence and ask ourselves, is there a like term with 2x squared? There is, and we have to look carefully at the operation. It's plus 3x squared. Well, 2x squared plus 3x squared would make 5x squared. we add the coefficients, and the variable stays exactly the same. When we look at the next term, we have plus 3x. Well, is there a like term with plus 3x? There is, minus 5x. And here's again where we have to be careful with our integer rules, and we're going to approach this like we're combining operations. So if we add 3 and subtract 5 altogether, that means we're subtracting 2. So plus 3 minus 5 makes 2. Plus 3x minus 5x makes minus 2x. And finally, we have minus 4. And there is a like term with that. It's minus 7. Again, we're going to look at this like we're combining operations. If I subtract 4 and then subtract 7, altogether I'm subtracting 11. And now we have a math sentence that is still a polynomial, but there are no more like terms here. And we got this polynomial by adding the like terms in the original two polynomials. So next we're going to look at an example where we're subtracting two polynomials. And again here, the first thing we're going to want to do is get rid of these brackets. Just like with the last example, when we get rid of the brackets in the first polynomial, nothing changes. It stays exactly the same. There's nothing to the left of this polynomial to distribute into there or anything. So we can just simply remove those brackets and the terms stay exactly the same. Well, we do have to be particularly careful when we're removing the second bracket, and we have to look carefully at the sign. And here we're subtracting a positive. Well, subtracting a positive is just the same as subtracting. So we still just have minus 7y squared there. Next we're subtracting a positive again. So it's subtracting positive 8y. And subtracting a positive, again, is the same as subtracting. And finally, we're subtracting now a negative, or a minus. Subtracting a minus is the same as adding. So what observations can we make here when we get rid of the brackets when we're subtracting polynomials? Well, when we're removing the brackets, the first polynomial still stays exactly the same. But the second polynomial, you probably notice everything changed to its opposite. So here we had positive 7y squared, and now we have minus 7y squared. Previously we had plus 8y, and now we have minus 8y. We had minus 9 before, and now we have plus 9. And that's because when you subtract, and when you first learn to subtract with integers, remember, you change subtraction to addition and change the sign of the second number. That's essentially what's happening here. But the bottom line is, when you get rid of the brackets in the second polynomial, everything changes to its opposite. The first polynomial, everything stays the same. Well, now we have a case where, once again, all we can really do is combine the like terms. So if we start with 5y squared, our like term with that is minus 7y squared. So if we combine 5y squared minus 7y squared, we get negative 2y squared. Carrying on, we go to the next term. We've got minus 2y. Our like term with that is minus 8y. Well, if I subtract 2 and then subtract 8, overall I'm subtracting 10. So minus 2y minus 8y is minus 10y. And then finally we have plus 8 and plus 9. Plus 8 plus 9 makes plus 17. So now we've subtracted these two polynomials by first removing the brackets in the first one, and the first one stays the same, removing the brackets in the second one, and everything turned it to its opposite, and then combining the like terms. Alright, so let's take a look at another example where, again, we're subtracting two polynomials here. So the first thing we're going to want to do is remove the brackets. And when we remove the brackets on the first polynomial, nothing changes. Everything stays exactly the same because we're not distributing anything into there. So I can just rewrite 3z squared minus 4z plus 8. Now, for the second set of brackets, we do have to be careful with our signs. We're subtracting negative 3. And as you saw in the last one, essentially when we remove the brackets, when we're subtracting, everything inside the brackets changes to its opposite. So instead of negative 3z squared, we have plus 3z squared. Instead of minus 4y, we have plus 4y. And instead of plus 8z, we have minus 8z. Well, now once again, all we can do is combine the like terms. So if we start with 3z squared, if we look across, we do have another like term with that. It's plus 3z squared. So 3z squared plus 3z squared makes 6z squared. Going to the next term, we have minus 4z. Minus 4z can be combined with minus 8z. So minus 4 minus 8, when you combine those two things, you get minus 12. So minus 4z minus 8z is minus 12z. Now, when we go to the next term, this plus 8, if I go down my math sentence here, I can see I don't have a like term with that plus 8. So there's nothing to combine that with. So we haven't dealt with that at all, which means we need to rewrite it. It still has to be part of our math sentence. And similarly, our next term that we haven't dealt with yet is plus 4y. Well, there is no like term with plus 4y, but we still do have to include it in our math sentence. And we end up with something that looks like that when we subtract these two polynomials by getting rid of the brackets in the first one, getting rid of the brackets in the second one and changing everything to its opposite because it's subtraction, and then just simply combining the like terms. We combined all the like terms that we could, but then we were still left with some terms, and we had to include those in our final math sentence. So here again we have an example where we are subtracting these two polynomials. And if you recall at the beginning of this video, I talked a little bit about order of operations. And you probably noticed right away something a little bit different about this question in that we have these numbers here in front of the brackets. So, well, the question you might ask yourself is, well, what are those numbers doing to what's inside the brackets? And you want to ask yourself, well, what operation is there, really? And the operation that's there is multiplication. So it's 5 times everything that's inside of these brackets. And here it's minus 3 times everything inside of these brackets. Well, if we were going to follow order of operations here, we would normally start with what's inside the brackets. But looking at what we have inside of the brackets, there are no like terms there. There's nothing that you can combine. So we actually have to skip brackets, and now we have to move to multiplication. Before we can add or subtract anything, we've got to multiply. And this is where we're using what's called distributive law, something we talked about in one of the previous videos, where with the first bracket, we're distributing that 5 into those brackets. In other words, we're multiplying 5 times everything inside of that first bracket. So 5 times 3x is 15x. And next we have 5 times plus 2y. Well, 5 is a positive, and we have positive 2y, positive times a positive. 5 times 2 times y. The only part of that you can combine is 5 times 2. So 5 times 2y is 10y, and then finally 5 times minus 2, a positive times a minus is a minus, so that's minus 10. And next we're going to distribute this minus 3 into the brackets. So negative 3 times 2x, a negative times a positive is a negative. So minus 3 times 2x is minus 6x. Minus 3 times minus 2y, a minus times a minus is a plus. And 3 times 2y is 6y. And finally, minus 3 times minus 3, a minus times a minus is a plus. And 3 times 3 is 9. And here you can see that by distributing these numbers into the brackets, we actually do get rid of the brackets. So once again, we're just left with a situation where we have to combine the like terms. 15x minus 6x is 9x, plus 10y plus 6y. So if I add 10 and then add 6, that means we're adding 16y. And minus 10 plus 9. So if I subtract 10 and then add 9, altogether that means I'm subtracting 1. And there we've combined all the like terms, and we've also dealt with all of the terms. So there are no terms left over here that we have to write, because we've combined all of them. And in our math sentence here, there are no more like terms to deal with. So that's as simplified as we can make it. So to finish off our video on adding and subtracting polynomials, I'm going to ask you to answer a couple of questions here. So with the first two examples, you're simply adding. So if you recall, when you're adding, you can just remove the brackets and the operations stay the same. Just remember to be careful with the first term, it's plus 4x. So you have to include the operation there. But the signs stay the same. With question 3 and 4, you're subtracting those polynomials. So you do want to remove the brackets first, but remember when you remove the brackets, everything in the second bracket changes to its opposite. And with the last one, there's a little bit of simplifying you have to do there first before you can combine any like terms. You have to distribute the negative 4 into the brackets first, and you have to distribute the minus 5 into the brackets first. In other words, multiply all of the terms by what's outside of the brackets, being very careful of the signs, and then combining any like terms that are there. With question number 4, one other thing you're going to have to be a little bit careful of is there are some terms that don't have like terms to go with. So remember, you have to just include those in your final answer, any terms that you don't combine with other terms. If you're able to answer those questions, congratulations, you now have a firm understanding of adding and subtracting polynomials.